Hi there, my name is Kay Moon and I'm a twin flame channel and Western astrologer, and this is a video about the second new moon in Cancer for 2020 for Lightworkers. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing, watching, and sharing. If you didn't already know, there is a very special fundraiser going on at this time for Lee and Sherry of Relationship Reinvented, and you are invited to contribute. Every little bit counts, even if all you have is $1. It's a hard time to ask. It's a hard time to give, given that so many of us are facing our own financial hardships due to the pandemic. But in honoring of all of the contributions Lee and Sherry have provided to the Twin Flame community, I am making the invitation here on my channel as far and wide as I can to contribute, to have the opportunity to say, you've given me a little bit of something, I'd like to give you back a little bit of what I have to give you as well. You can find the link to their GoFundMe below this video. This is the second new moon in Cancer for the year of 2020, and that's really rare. Normally, we only have one new moon in a sign per year. When we get two, it's like we get a double opportunity to make things right in the area of life that that sign governs. It's very important to understand your chart and to know which house and houses are governed by the moon and by Cancer, the sign that the moon rules, because that's the house in which you have an opportunity for an emotional reset, an emotional new beginning. And any planets that the moon touches in your chart are also echoing this opportunity for a new beginning, and by extension, the signs and the houses that those signs govern. If you're curious about how that looks for you, definitely give me that email at chrysalismoon@gmail.com, and you'll receive an autoresponder that tells you how to book a reading with me. Personal readings only are available at this time to the general public. And if you're curious about how what I'm about to share plays out, shoot me an email and we'll set it up. This particular moon, this new moon in Cancer, is at the tail end of Cancer. The first new moon in Cancer was at the very beginning. This new moon sits opposite here, Chariklo conjunct Saturn. This is probably my favorite new moon of all of 2020. And the reason why is because I love new moons, new beginnings, new opportunities, the opportunity to write afresh and to create anew. We also have Saturn conjunct Chariklo, and this is a dominant energy for 2020. For those of you that don't know the story of Chariklo, Chariklo was the handmaiden of Athena, and there was a period of time where, the rules were for the gods and goddesses of Mount Olympus, no mortal was meant to look upon them. As the handmaiden to Athena, Chariklo was supposed to ensure rules were enforced, obviously, and to support Athena with whatever she needed. By the river one day, Athena was bathing nude. And lo and behold, she looks up across the water. There's a gentleman, a human, a mortal, who happens to be fishing. He looks up, sees Athena nude. Punishment for seeing one of the gods in the nude, or repercussion, I don't know if it was punishment, repercussion, or simply a side effect of seeing a god naked, is that you are struck blind. And so at that moment, Chariklo realizes, wow, that boy who was struck blind was my own son. And her son was a hunter. How can a hunter hunt without his sight? And in this particular moment, Chariklo beseeches Athena and says, please Please give my son sight back. He knows who I am. He knows what I do. He understands the rules. Please restore his sight. And Athena thinks on this and says, I can't give your son his sight back, but what I will do is I will give him the opportunity and the ability to see without eyes. And in that moment, her son is given the capacity to see the unseen world, to understand through having all of his clairs open what it is to know without necessarily having sight. And so Chariklo in this operation is the divine intercessor. She acts as the go-between between the mortals and the gods. And she says, what was taken from you, I will on your behalf ensure something is given back to you in recompense. I will ensure that something is given back to you and restored to you. And with Chariklo conjunct Saturn, the restorer of integrity and the restorer of wholeness, opposite or sitting under the light of this new moon, there is an opportunity within us and around us where our angels are gathered saying and whispering, what has been taken from you, what has been stripped of you, and what has compromised your wholeness. Beseech me to restore it, and I will work with you. I will assist you. And there's this gift, there's this divine gifting in the sky at this moment, in a moment of so much loss and so much pain and so much transformation. There is this divine gifting surrounding us at this time, giving us the opportunity to get back something better than what was lost, even if what was lost cannot return. I know there's so many of you, I've been seeing your stories hit my inbox with the pandemic who have either lost jobs or have a compromised sense of health and well-being, family members, friends, a sense of safety and financial security. And this is just the moment in our astrological year where there's this kind of energy around us that says, you're not alone. Those who see us and support us are listening, are waiting to receive our prayers, that what we most need can be restored to us in a way that is most needed for the upcoming chapter of our life. So while you may not receive that job back, while you may not get that person back, this is the moment where what your soul truly does need to embark upon that next chapter can in fact be restored to you through the support of your own prayer, your own work, your own discipline. That's the Saturn component. And your own prayer, that's the Chariklo component. What we work for, we receive. And all it requires under the light of this particular new moon is the capacity to be vulnerable, the willingness to seek out and honor in our hearts the truth of our own feelings. That's Cancer. What is it in our heart that we feel we've lost? And what is it in our heart that we'd like to have back and begin anew? This is the new moon in which to ask for it. So it's, like I said, it's one of my favorite new moons of the entire year, given some of the placements. And the placements are challenging. I'm not going to lie about that. You may notice here that the energy is kind of stacked in this way where it's like almost everything is in what looks like a little cross. And this is both challenging and it's good. There's a cardinal grand cross in the sky energetically. Grand crosses provide a lot of tension. And as my astrology teacher, Nadia Shah, shares, the tension of 90-degree and 180-degree angles provide the motivation we need internally to recognize what has to be done in order to move things forward. There's definitely something in the air that has us feeling like this can't last. It is not sustainable the way it is. Something's gotta give. And you're seeing this globally, and in the microcosm as well. And so, where this tension is in existence in your life, what you're being asked to do with this particular new moon is to sit deeply with your emotions, bring them to cognition. That's the Mercury also here in the emotional water sign of Cancer. Recognize them, bring them into communication, and then give yourself the opportunity to work towards them. That's the Saturn piece, and request of the divine to be there for you and greet you on the other side. That's the Chariklo piece. This tension energy is really kind of created by the cardinality and the cardinal grand cross. We've got Juno here and creation goddess here in the sign of Libra. We've got a wonderful configuration here in Aries, which I'll touch on now, but there's a video coming about it for cardinal signs, Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn, because this is going to mark the end of your year extremely heavily. And it's a very transformative and triggering energy. And then we've got this ending energy and transformation energy that's been here all year in the sign of Capricorn, now being opposed by a stellium forming here in the sign of Cancer. So what this is talking about, cardinal signs are all about initiative, taking a step. Fixed signs are about sustaining things, doing what has to be done to maintain things as they are and create sustainability. Mutable signs are all about going with the flow, the shape shift, and the transformation. But with so much energy in a cardinal sign, the universe is looking at us at the chessboard and saying, it's your move. I will follow you where you go, but you do need to choose. Will you choose your own support? Will you choose your own thriving? If you choose it, I'll follow you, but you have to make the choice. You have to make this first step. And the area of your chart where Cancer sits and where the other cardinal signs sit are the areas where you're being asked to make this choice. This energy has been in the air for the better part of a year so far. It really started to configure last year at this time. And the ramp up has been like a steady increase in pressure since then. I know from speaking to many of you, this has been about a move, as Cancer has been about homes. For some of you, it's been about making the relationship choices that truly honor your heart and not necessarily what you think you should be doing. That's Libra. The Aries piece of this is about making transformations that honor your sense of self and integrity and wholeness in who you are, and honor your passion, ambition, and drives, that sense of purpose within you. And the Capricorn energy, many of you have shifted jobs and moved from working in an office to working at home, from working at home in one way to building a new business in a different way. No matter what your sign is, we all have all of these signs governing some house in our chart. And under this new moon, it's our specific initiative choice based on our actions, because cardinal signs are about action. Based on our actions that the universe is waiting for as our signal to know and to understand, okay, this is where I support him. This is where I support her. They're waiting on you. And the sooner you move, the faster they can get behind you with momentum. This is a fun time in a euphemistic way. If there's a energetic detachment that you can create with this energy, it'll support you in understanding, oh, okay, I can now zoom out and see the greater patterns of my life, why things have played out the way they have, who I've been, because this energy comes with a very high degree of personal accountability. Why have things played out in your life the way they have? What choices are in what patterns are in the choices that you have made? And what new pattern would we like to enact going forward in the areas of life we've discussed? This Juno conjunct creation goddess energy over here is really lovely in the way that it's asking us to create new ways and new pathways forward in our partnerships and to be thoughtful about them. This energy over here in Capricorn, which I've talked about in just about every video over here, is both about an ending, moving into an afterlife phase of reconstruction, or how should I put it, an afterlife phase of contemplation, and then a reconstructive energy with a rebirth. Pluto is the biggest heavy hitter in this sign, so it has some of the most influence. Pluto being the lord of the underworld, sex, death, taxes, but also our fears, is impacting both the Saturn, the Chariklo, the Jupiter, the Palace, as well as the Pholus here. And those of you who know what they mean, great. But if you don't, essentially what's going on is the Lord of the Underworld is doing a grand, let's just say a grand closing of a particular chapter of our lives that Capricorn has to do with. And this closing has been underway for some time. For many of you, it's important, like I said, to understand your chart and know which house Capricorn governs, because that's the house where you have been getting the signal to create that completion since last year. With Jupiter and Pluto meeting up here, both in retrograde, now for the second time this year, this energy at this particular moment in time is forcing us to source our faith from within us. Because with Jupiter retrograde, Jupiter being about faith, hope, optimism, expansion, Jupiter retrograde, meaning moving backwards, the energy for that can't be found outside of us. It can only be found within us. So as it seems the world is falling apart on the outside, this is a moment in time where in the darkness, we can find the single points of light and truth that allow us to build a congruent and integritous future, as the leading planet here in Capricorn is Saturn, and Saturn is about integrity. It's prepared the other degrees of the sign here to move toward integrity as each planet hits those degrees. So our faith is needing to move back toward wholeness. Our capacity to understand why endings are part of life and part of rebirth and necessary, and giving us faith even through the completion cycle and the rebirth cycle, that Saturn has prepared the way for us to be in wholeness and integrity around that. So big energies here in Capricorn. This is also, like I said, the second time Jupiter and Pluto meet. Faith, hope, and optimism, and sex, death, and taxes, Lord of the Underworld, and endings. They're going to meet the third time in November. And a couple of things of interest about the way they've met up. The first time they met together was in March. or was it March? Yeah, no, it might have been a little bit earlier than that. But Pisces season, it was Pisces season. It was March when they met. One of the things that happened the first time that they met, and that's important to pay attention to because we have one more repeat of this, was that there were a few stories floating around online during that time that there was it. The best way to put it is that they were conspiracy theories. I think we all know what that means. Um, Many who understand them to be true, many who understand them to be false, but somewhere in between is the truth. The reason why it got so tricky at that time, at this time, because there was a second wave of a similar type of conversation that surfaced. I think the first one was about tunnels and children in New York City and LA and trafficking. This second time has been about cabinets and trafficking and children. The reason there's been so much of a lack of clarity during these windows of time is because there is some level of truth coming to surface that is also because Jupiter rules Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a lot about truth. Simultaneously, there's also a lack of clarity going on. There's a lack of actual, factual, pinpointed, clear details. The reason for that has been because of the way Neptune has been talking to Mercury each time. The first time was a Neptune conjunction with Mercury. This time it was a trine. The last time, and this will be during Scorpio season, it'll be a trine. Look for this in November. There will be some third type of very similar conversation that pops up on the internet. One of the things that's important to understand about conspiracy theories is that they are given rise when there is a set of a series of pieces of information that the rational mind recognizes don't add up. We recognize when we look at it with our rational mind, 2 and 2 are not making 4 here. There's something missing. Neptune is what's causing the something to be missing or hidden from view. Neptune governs the unseen, unknown world because it's speaking so much to Mercury. Mercury is mind and communication. It is dissolving clarity. It's pulling clarity out of the conversation. And because most human beings are actually kind of smart, if we give them the benefit of the doubt, most human beings recognize when there's some information that's missing here. In the presence of fear, which is Pluto, and the absence of information, which is Neptune talking to Mercury, what we get in return is the rise of filling in the blanks as best as we can to make sense of our world. It's a very natural response. And so you'll want to pay attention to the ways that the collective is doing this on the macro, but where this is happening in your own world on the micro, where there may be some challenge with sitting in the unknown, triggering about what's unclear, and a desire to fill in the blank with information that is, you're trying to make 2 and 2 make 4, but you recognize there's information missing that may be causing our worst fears to play a part in the way we're looking at our world. That's not to say that what's happening isn't true or that it's not true. As light workers, it's part of our responsibility to be willing to look at the truth, but also have the wisdom and discernment to recognize when there's not enough information presented to call things truth. so that we don't lend our amplified creator capacities and abilities to fear energies revolving on the planet. It's very necessary as light workers that we don't amplify the fear energy, that we call forward truth energy. And when we recognize truth energy isn't always available, that we hold and maintain light in the presence of the unknown. And that's what we're going to be called upon to do in Scorpio season. We've been called upon to do that now during Cancer season. And we were called upon to do that in March as the pandemic spread worldwide. As you know, we've just also now seen a rise in pandemic numbers during the same period of time where Jupiter and Pluto are talking, and Neptune and Mercury are talking. We saw a rise in March. We will see another rise again based on the patterning that is presenting. It's very likely we may see another rise again during Scorpio season. Again, at that time, it's important to recognize what we do know, hold light, and hold the discernment for, I don't have enough information to be able to pass judgment, and I refuse to lend my significant resources to fear. So just a little piece of preparation on that, as I've noticed a pattern emerge there, and it's important to acknowledge it, but it's also important to recognize we have a lot of power in the way people think as light workers, especially those around us. We also have a lot of power in the way people respond as light workers. So use your light, work your light. And if you are finding at this time that you can't seem to find any light outside of you, especially with Pluto and Jupiter retrograde and in conversation with one another, it's because the light is actually within you. And it may be small, it may be as tiny as the point of a needle, but it is there. And it's important to honor that it's there. And to the degree that you can, tune out anything that would overpower your own light so that you can do what must be done with all of this cardinal, take the initiative, make a choice energy to amplify your light. Okay. That's the energy. The last thing I'll say about this lunar period and the last lunar period is that, and actually the next 6 months, there's a lineup here in the sign of Aries that is kicking off a lot of on edge triggering energy in the collective. You may notice that people are snappier, quicker to move to anger, quicker to move to judgment, struggling with maintaining their own inner peace. You may notice this is also true about you. In the sign of the self and the recognition of a sense of self, of personal identity, this is where you end and I personally begin, Aries. We have 4 significant placements here. Aries, who's been here for a very, very long time, many, many decades. Aries moves quite slow. She's the energy of righteous riot, righteous rage, where Aries has been excluded from the table. Aries will make it known and clear by creating discord and disharmony, but she only does that when she has been unafforded a voice. We have Lilith here. Lilith is the energy of I will not take anything that does not serve me. First wife of Adam, she was given the same deal Eve was given. Make these babies, eat this fruit, not that. Help Adam, I'll be back to check on you. She didn't want it. She left the garden. Rather than staying with the protection and the resources and the people, the creators that she knew, she decided to take her chances in the wild unknown. And when she left the garden, we didn't hear from her in the modern creation stories again. She is the energy of, I'd rather take nothing than take this. Mars. Mars is a very neutral energy. They all are. It's just outward projected momentum. Mars is simply the energy of motivation. It's the capacity to move forward. In the light, this becomes ambition and passion. In the shadow, this can become aggression and warlike energy. It is normally neutral, but conjunct the first two and Chiron, which has been surfacing our wounds to our personhood and our identity. Mars is struggling to keep its neutrality and may take on a lot more of its aggressive energy at this time. Mars is going to be in the sign of Aries for 6 months. Normally, it's only in a sign for 40 days. It will retrograde back and forth, touching these planets here. In this conversation, Mars is igniting all of them with the motivation to do what must be done to create a better positioning for who we personally are. This is normally a good thing, but when you are in a moment like we are in 2020 of so much divisiveness, such recognition of our own pain, our own struggles, our own exclusion, this can lend itself to a me versus them energy, which you're already seeing play out in the collective. They're wrong, I'm right. They're crazy, I'm sane. They're not cooperating, but I'm open. They are like this, but I'm like that. There's a real triggering energy in the collective at this time. And what we're all being asked to do is to recognize and understand that the triggers that are coming up are meant to assist us with understanding who we are. This is all happening in the sign of Aries, who I am as an individual, instead of trying to project it outward on another and get them to change. Getting them to change is one of the things that we do when we either shut them out completely or engage in arguing with them across social media platforms, for example. This particular triggering energy that you're seeing the rise of in the collective is meant to inform you of your own wounding. Where are you personally feeling affronted, wounded, excluded? Learn the name of your wounds, expose them to the light. That is the only way to be able to heal them. And this particular new moon, with all of this cardinal energy, is asking us to come to clarity with the name of our wounds. Let me just write that down. And in so doing, you gain true power as opposed to staying in the position of victimhood, staying in the position of they are trying to take something away from me. No one's trying to take anything away from you. There's a seat for you at the table, provided A, willing to work, B, willing to let go of what was, C, willing to ask the divine to recreate what was lost. And this all sprouts from being willing to be with the truth of our wounding. And in being in with the truth of our wounding, Cancer, new moon, recognition of our own pain and our true desires, we can come back home to self, come to true power, and honestly and congruently begin to partner with others. So I say that all to say, expect that between now and the end of the year, the tensions that you have seen rise socially, economically, financially, from a business perspective, with Mars coming into contact with these energies that are forcing us to look at our wounds and where we have been excluded and have then allowed other people to exclude us. Our buttons are out for people to press, and this is actually a good thing. With our buttons getting pressed, they allow us to see where we need to work. This is the time to accept the triggers for what they are, and then find the support you need to deal with yourself before you even try to deal with another. Okay? But there's true power during this new moon in Cancer. And this is really about amplifying your light by coming to terms with and being able to name your wounds for what they are. I thank you so much for subscribing, for listening, for sharing. And if you'd like to check out how all of this is playing in your chart, give me an email, shoot me an email at chrysalismoon, KRYSALISMOON @gmail.com. We'll take a look at what wounding is indicated for you to look at. And from my resource list, because I've been amassing a lot of resources for Lightworkers in the collective, we can have a conversation about what it is that you need to work on during this time so that your buttons aren't all the way out there for everyone to press. And you can get the heads up on which buttons might be out there that people can press so that you can have more mastery and self-control in a moment where it seems like everyone else is losing theirs. You don't have to be a part of the wave of crazy, and instead you can find your way back toward your own center. All right, I look forward to hearing from you, and thank you again for liking, watching, subscribing, and sharing. Take great care. Bye for now.